Something cool happens when you take a glow-in-the-dark star and turn out the lights. What that? Now, you've seen it plenty times before, whether it's glow-in-the-dark stars or decorations or whatever other kinds of things we found to use the same luminescent kind of coloring for. The thing I love about glow-in-the-dark stars is they don't have batteries, they don't have an electrical source, they're generating light, they're giving off light, and it's only when you turn out the lights that you can notice it. But that means that whatever's giving off light in the dark is there all along. Just an awful lot of the time you can't see it, right? When the lights are on, when it's sort of absorbing the light from outside, you can't tell that it's capable of glowing. Kind of like the actual stars in the sky are there all the time, even through the daytime. But during the day, the sun's light overpowers it. You can't tell that that the stars are also out there when the sun is shining. But they're there all along. I keep that mental picture in mind when I think about the story we're going to hear this coming Sunday, that we hear every year, about the story we call the Transfiguration of Jesus. Jesus takes his inner circle of disciples, Peter and James and John. They come up on this mountain with him, and something happens where Jesus' appearance is transformed. He's metamorphosized in front of them, and it's somehow still Jesus, and yet he looks different. His clothing changes appearance, and it's dazzling white, and it's like there's light emanating from him. And for a lot of my life, I think I heard this story as, oh, it's a miracle, a change that happens in Jesus. Something is happening to Jesus. I think more honestly, it's something more like this. That what's true of Jesus all the time, that he is God's divine Son, that he's the beloved, he's the one we've been waiting for, that's true all along, but only finally at last in this moment on the mountaintop do Jesus' inner circle of disciples see and recognize what's always been true about Jesus. They sort of see this divine light emanating from him, and it's they're the ones who need it. They're the ones who need this moment of clarity for who Jesus actually is. The voice, in fact, that comes from heaven at this moment, the voice of God says, "This is my Son, listen to him." It's interesting, that's different. A few weeks ago, we heard the story of Jesus being baptized, and when Mark tells the story, at Jesus' baptism, the same voice from heaven comes, but it says to Jesus, "You are my Son, the beloved." In other words, all Jesus' adult life, all his public ministry life long, he's known his identity. God's voice has said clearly, "You are my Son." But they're up on the mountaintop. The voice isn't for Jesus' sake. He knows who he is. But his disciples need that moment of clarity to see clearly who Jesus always has been all along. So the moment up on the mountaintop is not like a promotion for Jesus. It's not like he was applying to become Messiah and at this moment he's awarded the rank of Messiah or awarded the rank of being God's Son. He's always been that. This moment is like the lights going out so that you can see the glowing light of the glow-in-the-dark star, to see who Jesus has been, is, and always will be all along. It's a moment of seeing clearly what was always already true. So the question then becomes, why? Why do they need this moment? Why is it important for them to see and hear who Jesus is at this moment? And it seems that the real importance is this story marks a turning point. After this point, it becomes really clear. Jesus is headed intentionally, clearly on the journey toward the cross. Earlier in the story of the Gospels, the respectable religious people and the powerful people are beginning to conspire against Jesus. But up till this point, it's kind of been a will they, won't they, will they actually proceed in trying to get Jesus in trouble. And Jesus has been able to deftly maneuver around them. At this turning point, it becomes clear Jesus is intentionally headed toward the cross. He is about to share with his disciples that his way of being God's Messiah, his way of bringing the reign of God, isn't by raising up an army and conquering his enemies, but by laying down his life and loving even his enemies, going to a cross for the sake of the world. As a ransom for many, Jesus will say later on in Mark's Gospel. That doesn't seem like what a Messiah is supposed to do. If you live in the first century, you've heard the word Messiah a bunch of times, and almost everybody pictures somebody who's powerful, either powerful as lawgiver, powerful as teacher of righteousness, powerful as commander of angel armies, or powerful as one who will raise up his own army of liberators, the zealots, and they will try and fight off the Romans and kill anybody in their path, to conquer like kings do. And Jesus makes it clear that's not his way of being the Messiah. That's not God's way of saving the world. Jesus is about to do a very un-Messiah-like thing of laying down his life and going to the grave, going even to death on a cross at the hands of the empire and the respectable religious people. That's not what anybody expects. So this moment is one of those moments of clarity. Okay, everybody, I'm about to go places you don't expect the Messiah to go. I'm about to do things you don't expect the Messiah to do. I'm about to show God's power and glory, not by conquering and crushing and killing other people, but by laying down my life in self-giving love between thieves on a shameful cross. So I'm showing you now who I really am, who I have been all along, who I will be moving forward. That moment on the mountaintop is a moment of clarity. And once you see that, once you know that, okay, I've got that, so now I'm going to remember the same Jesus who now goes into the depths of human suffering and hanging out with the outcast and getting himself in trouble and even going to a cross. This one is God's own Son. This is the beloved. This is who Jesus always has been. Sometimes in our life we get those moments of clarity, and they don't last long necessarily. But the point then is, once you had that moment of clarity that guides you into the places that sometimes are difficult to go through, our cross moments, following where Jesus leads us, to lay down our lives for the sake of helping other people, to risk our comfort or complacency for the sake of being attentive to the needs of neighbors and other people. We get those moments of clarity not to stay there forever, as much as Peter would love to stay up on the mountain forever. We get those moments of clarity so that then we can follow Jesus into all the places that surprise us and upend our expectations. That's the conversation we're having this coming Sunday as we take a look at the story of the Transfiguration and what it means for the journey ahead of us, the journey that we call Lent, that begins soon on February 14th with Ash Wednesday, but also the journey of all our lives, taking up our crosses and following after Jesus. Join us for that conversation this Sunday. See you then.